It's time for another episode of the Josh Cast. Josh Cast. Josh Cast. Lifestyles. Talking. Josh. Josh Cast. I'm not happy with that theme. Terrible theme right there. That's what happens when I try to write the theme myself. I should hire someone else to do the theme. I try. It just hasn't been a good process trying to get someone to write a good theme for this. It just has not been a good process at all. But what can you do? What can you do? You can only move forward. So, still worrying about the bladder situation. That's still happening. I don't think my doctor entirely knows why, but my bladder is not squeezing as well as it should be. And so, whenever this happens and there's an unknown, I enter this mindset where I say to myself, I can figure this out myself. I had a 3.8 GPA in high school. Let's figure this out. Let's use logic and the internet, which are two words that have never been used together and will never be used together again. And I start Googling it, and I try to figure out what to do. And one idea, apparently, is I should be doing Kegel exercises to strengthen my bladder muscles, or to strengthen the pelvic floor muscles. I don't know. Muscles need to be strengthened, so I should be doing Kegels. So, last night I started to do Kegels. And I went, it's Kegels. Yeah, I got this. This is easy. Kegels. Got it. Then after about the second Kegel, I went, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. So I think I basically, my bladder needs to start lifting weights. That's apparently the solution here. My bladder needs to be pumped up. So that's a new challenge. That's going to be fun. I have heard other comedians talk about this, but I guess I'm entering the period in my life where exercise is necessary just to maintain what I've got. Which sounds so sad to me. Terribly sad. That's terribly sad to me. That it's got to have the routine maintenance. It's like, taking in that 30-year-old Toyota Corolla to get serviced. That's where I'm at in my life. It's not this. I'm not the sexy car anymore. I never was the sexy car. But there was a period in my life where I was at my sexual prime. At least according to the Wikipedia article. Right around the time I was supposedly in my sexual prime, I was experiencing major depression. So, I didn't even notice I was in my sexual prime. It was news to me that there was it doesn't even feel like a sexual prime. There's a period where I was sexual and now I'm getting less sexual and I have to pee more. Well, this podcast is getting funnier by the minute. So where am I going all this? What's the point I'm trying to make? You ask? Oh, dear listener. The point I'm trying to make is I'm afraid to die. I'm afraid to degenerate into death. And I'm annoyed with what I have to do to possibly prevent that. So I'm staring down the barrel of a no-win situation here. And I don't know, I remember my grandfather telling me, you gotta exercise, Josh. It's really important to exercise. Gotta exercise. Eat right and exercise. That's what he said. And then there's a part of me that's like, but he's dead. Ultimately, it didn't help him. No one can escape death. I don't care how much kale you eat. And how long have you been alive, Mr. Jenkins? I have been on this earth 5,000 years. 5,000 years. Yes. You can carbon date a piece of my skin and you'll know the truth. Well, it looks like we carbon dated your skin, and then you are telling the truth. You are 5,000 years old. Yes, I am. And before you start asking me questions, let's all be cognizant of the Mel Brooks Carl Reiner record and not do anything that's going to get us sued. Yeah, you're right. I was about to ask you a bunch of comedically charged questions that you would answer hilariously. But it's been done with Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner. That's right. You've just entered into a sketch that you shouldn't be doing. How do we get out of it? Awkwardly, that's how. By simply stopping. So that happened. That's my new transition. I like that. So that happened. Yeah, I don't know. All I do is I feel bloated and occasionally inspired. Bloated and inspired. That should be the name of my next comedy album. Bloated and inspired. Hi, Dirk Johnson here. I am a motivational speaker who suffers from clinical depression. I have a new book. It's called There's Hope Until There's Not. I like to go around the country giving motivational speeches and then tearing down about 50% of what I just said. And people love it. Let's get a testimonial from a recent person who attended one of these motivational speeches. Hi, I'm Derek from Cincinnati, and when I went to see this motivational speech, the first half of the speech, I really felt like I could do anything. And then in the second half of the speech, I realized that it doesn't matter whether I can do anything or not. And I left feeling, really like the right mix of inspired and hopeless. And it really set me up for success in the modern world. That's right. For the low price of $17.75, you too can own one of these terrific motivational speeches on your very own VHS cassette. Yes, we know that nobody uses VHS cassettes anymore, but that's the only device that we're sending you answers on. But back to the bloatedness and the bladderness and the helplessness. That's what it is. It's helplessness. I just don't know what to do to make this better. Of course, it's all probably stress related. That's what everyone keeps telling me. It's all stress related. It's caused by stress. He's succumbed to the dark side of the Force. But that's impossible, Master. Not impossible. Was he stressed? Yes, he was. Did he suffer from anxiety? Yes. The dark side of the Force has claimed him. What has he been doing since he succumbed to the dark side of the Force? Well, he's just been using the Force healing on himself. Just healing himself with the Force. Has he been injured? No, he hasn't. It's as a precaution. He's healing himself preemptively. As you can see, the dark side of the Force has seeped into his neuroses. Yes, and he's constantly asking if everything is okay. Constantly people-pleasing. The Emperor wants to kill him. I mean, the Emperor might just kill him for us, frankly. Now they're working on the trees again. Or maybe they're not. Doing construction work. Always on rush hour on this street. 9 a.m. is the only time that things happen. God forbid they do it earlier in the day. My name is Muffy, and I am an 80s yuppie cliche voice. Pleasure to be here. I think it's about time that I've done this podcast. I spend most of my days playing tennis, checking the stock market. Doing a bump of cocaine here, a bump of cocaine there. And saying the name Muffy a lot. That's living the life of an 80s yuppie cliche voice. Here's who I am envious of. I'm envious of the radio personalities on the classical stations. Because they can say anything. Especially, they can make a joke, and even if it's not funny, they still have status somehow. It doesn't matter. Because they are classical, either they're classical composers or they have that same classical composer swagger. But they never feel shame in what they say. You're listening to K Mozart, Southern California, Los Angeles. K5419 3C. FM 32 in San Bernardino. FM 47 in Simi Valley. I'm your host, Clyde McGarville. Today we're going to be listening to, obviously, Mozart. And a concerto that is so breathtaking. It made the Prince of Wales fart while sleeping. I'll give you now Mozart's Dream Requiem, conducted by Jack Gallitant of the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra. That was Mozart, conducted by the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra. Next song to sing, or rather to play, is a concerto by Beethoven. Now, a lot of people, when they think of Beethoven, they imagine a man who's deaf, trying to eke out his famous concertos with the aid of a listening device. But this concerto was actually written by the dog in the Beethoven film, in D minor, composed by the dog Beethoven, not the human Beethoven. And the name of the piece is I Don't Recognize Your Smell. That was I Don't Recognize Your Smell, written by the dog who played Beethoven in the Beethoven movies. He's often been described, our next composer, that is, has often been described as a man with absolutely no penis whatsoever. Symphony 27 in the key of G by Peppard Lazarus, one of the greatest German composers of the 17th century. Conducted by a giant mechanical robot and the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra. This next concerto by Mozart, you could say, puts the Zart in Mozart. And that's a joke that only music students at the University of Rochester will get, because of an incident that happened back in 1987, when I was there covering the famous recording of Albert Schuller's Ninth Symphony. Let's just say an alien named Zart burst in and proceeded to set everything on fire. Hence, putting the Zart in Mozart. I'm pausing now to let the laughter just envelop the room.